All right, let's start this evening. Welcome, everyone. It is our fall finale of Evenings with Artifacts. It's our 9th and final evening. And tonight we are delighted to have Lynn Miller join us. For those of you who do not know Lynn, she is executive chef and restaurateur of Oseyo. We're very excited to hear all about her culinary journey and the artifacts that has shaped that journey, and have given a cozy personality and authenticity to Oseyo. For those of you outside of Austin, Oseyo is a restaurant located in Austin. Ellen has had the pleasure of dining there a couple of times. I'm looking forward to my next trip there. We thought that having Lynn join us tonight would be a very special way to cap off our series. As some of you may know, with my mother, my most cherished moments with her were cooking and recipes and kind of that family history and tradition that go along with it. So we thought it'd be great to have Lynn share her stories, her artifacts, and again, her journey. So with that, over to Ellen to kick us off tonight, and welcome, Lynn, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
All right, Lynn, I told you I'd go easy on you. No, welcome. Hi, everybody. I'm Ellen Goodwin, co-founder of Artifacts, and here we go. So as Heather said, Oseyo is here, local to me, at least in Austin. I wish I could send you all the delicious food, but I can't. But I brought you Lynn, which is the next best thing. Lynn, I think we should scene set a little bit before we travel back in time and tell people a little bit about Oseyo and the type of cuisine and the environment that you've created, just so they get a sense for what you've built.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Ellen and Heather, for having me. It feels really special. I've never been on a webinar. I was expecting a lot of faces, but it looks like I'm just talking and people are watching and listening. So hello out there. So Oseyo is a Korean American restaurant, and it's evolved from being called a Korean restaurant to a Korean American restaurant, because that was kind of part of my process, I guess, this last couple of years. But originally it was, and it still is, founded in some traditional recipes. The main menu that we serve every night is, and it's always there, is a collection of kind of my favorite recipes growing up and just what I would eat at home. And it was a collaboration between me and my mom and our current chef. So we had a lot of fun revisiting and trying to document my mom's recipes, following her around, being like, "What'd you put in there?" And then the concept was really about being able to present it in a more modern setting where there's great cocktails and a great wine program, and a lot of sake and soju to complement the food, and then a setting that is, you know, a place that I feel like I can host guests in. It's truly a reflection of just, it's an expression of mine, and so it feels like that's kind of why I guess would be called a modern Korean restaurant. I know sometimes people ask me that question. So that, and we're over on the east side, which is kind of a funky little growing area in Austin, and it welcomes a lot of interesting food concepts, and it's a really fun, younger environment. So yeah, does that
Yeah,
answer,
I
does that give
I
it a good?
actually I cheated, and I went there yesterday, and I even took a little picture in the corner where there's a cozy chair and it turns out Lynn artifacted the chair and it has a story, which I thought was fabulous. I had no idea, but now I do, and I just
I
took a
love
picture.
that.
It was beautiful and cozy, and then I went back to my table. But the modern, I'm glad you answered the modern part, because part of what I wanted to, like, can you give people in like 30 to a minute, 30 seconds to a minute, the types of dishes? What types of dishes, what types of foods would you expect to find in your restaurant? What does that mean? Because for a lot of us, we didn't grow up with Korean cuisine, and frankly, in a lot of places, even here in Austin, yours is very different, and I love it, from a lot of the other types of Korean cuisines I've had.
Yeah. Well, so contextually, like Korean, I think as an Asian culture in the States is one of the newer immigrant population versus like Chinese and Japanese and Thai. And so I think there's more of Chinese and Japanese restaurants that are, you know, modernized or Americanized or just different kinds of more chef forward expressions. And so I feel like Korean is kind of new to that scene. And that's why I think right now in our kind of culture, there's a lot of Korean chefs coming out there doing some really great things. And they're expressing kind of their take on Korean food, or maybe they're using Korean ingredients in a totally different cuisine, or taking Korean and elevating it to a really neat experience. And for me, I am a chef, but I really wanted to just focus on some traditional dishes that I love. And so they are, I guess, Americanized because I was born and raised here. My mom has lived here longer than she's lived in Korea, though she moved here when she was an adult. But I think we, over time, probably the palate changed. And so the flavors may feel more Americanized, but those dishes inherently are just what my mom and I would eat, or our family ate growing up. But I kind of divided it into an experience where you can start off with some smaller dishes and then go into the entrees. And that's a little bit of a different usual experience for Korean food. But Korean food in general kind of balances out all the five senses. You're supposed to have a very balanced meal. So there's always, a protein and a soup and a grain and then vegetables. And so a lot of Korean food's composed by like a barbecued meat or and then it's accompanied with a soup, or a rice dish with fish and soup, and then banchan, which are all the wonderful side dishes that you get in Korean food. So we have all of that. But our take a little bit lately is in our happy hour menu, we started to explore this more Korean Mexican fusion.
Yeah, I had some really hot peppers last night that were stuffed.
Our stuffed peppers. Yeah. So that was an inspiration of kind of taking that Mexican stuffed pepper, but we used Korean peppers and Korean and Mexican flavors stuffed with kind of a ponzu sauce. And so it's this really interesting merge between what my chef is Mexican. And so we have found a lot of common ground between the two cuisines of, long broths and stews and like mole type sauces and fermentation. And so we're having a lot of fun coming up with now, in a more of an expression of me as a Korean American. So there's specials that'll be starting to come out, and private event menus and happy hour menus that will have a more leaning towards that type of menu.
Does this make your mother unhappy if she was shaping the menu the menu and painstakingly translating these recipes into something you could present in a restaurant?
The traditional dishes will always be there.
Okay.
The menu will always be
Mom's
there.
safe. That's
Mom
good.
Stays. Mom is always on the table.
And I saw Heather put the link to the restaurant in the chat, which I'm glad she did, because there's a great photo with your mom in there, which I adore. So I guess the obvious question is, were you born cooking? So where did all of this inspiration come from? Take us back in time, because there are very few of us. My child is addicted to all these cooking shows, but I don't think she's going to ever own a restaurant. I'm just saying. But
yes, tell her not to.
Oh no, come on. Well, you did open during a pandemic, which is truly a novel experience, which we'll get to, but take us back in time. How did you get here?
Well, I was born in Dallas, and so I grew up in, Dallas, Texas, as a child of Korean immigrants. They moved here when they were in their 60s, but they didn't meet each other until they met. They actually met in Dallas, so that was unusual. And so my brother and I were born in Dallas, and they were studying here in college. They kind of got one of these abroad programs. And so I grew up kind of teaching my parents all about American culture. I'd be like, this is why kids get grounded. This is what sleepover is. It's okay to have friends over, when people ask you if you want more of something, you say yes, you don't say no, things like that. So my parents were very traditional. And so I grew up with just Korean food. All I ate was Korean food most of my life, most meals and all meals, until I got to an age where I was like middle school, and I had opinions about what was going to go in my lunch, and it's too embarrassing to take anything weird, and I wanted a cheese sandwich, just bread and cheese. I remember I took my mom to the grocery store. I was like, okay, these are the foods I want in the house. I was picking out Doritos and Ruffles and and then being like, I want this white bread with this Kraft cheese, and that's what I want for my sandwich. And my mom was like, I will never make you that.
She's horrified.
So I kind of like, it was part of just my palate to eat lots of different flavors, but I also just didn't have this connection with cooking until I got to college. And I kind of wanted to go to, for some reason, I wanted to go to the hotel school, like at a young age. Like, and I don't know what sparked that, but I had worked in hotels in high school and I had thought that I wanted to, maybe I associate with travel and whatever.
Sure,
So
yeah. I was thinking the travel, yeah.
yeah, and then I ended up at the Cornell Hotel School, and they have this incredible like culinary program that's not just culinary, but you can take all these culinary classes there. And so I focused on food and beverage as kind of my study and cooked there and just fell in love with, and then moved to New York City after that and basically worked
I mean,
in
you took the big
restaurants.
plunge, New York City. No,
It was
no
kind
pass
of
and go.
like, yeah, my parents were like, if you don't get a good job, you're coming home to Dallas. And I was like,
Oh, that's a
no.
threat.
So I got like the best job I could possibly get that was, respectable for my parents. But that gave me a window into like the New York restaurant scene. And I just fell in love with it. I was kind of obsessed with more of the culinary route of cooking, where, I was just in the artistry of it. And so I ended up kind of working at really great restaurants with really great, wonderful chefs and
What
had
types
some.
of cuisines did you start with in New York?
I worked so much. So it's interesting, as much of my experience was in the front of house.
Mhm.
So I worked at the New York Palace Hotel. I did help kind of like open their lobby and hotel restaurants.
Wow.
uh, Really young age. I didn't know what I was doing at all. I was just being, used and worked a lot and just do
So if
this,
kids
do
were
that.
listening right now, just say yes is another American tip. Like just say yes, see where it goes.
So I helped open their restaurants, but I learned so much at that time. I learned so much, and I was kind of a managing a bunch of senior union workers and learned a lot of skills in terms of managing people and opening. And then from there, I worked in various restaurants. I worked in a really great kind of Mediterranean restaurant by a chef, owned by a chef, Peter Hoffman, who is a very big activist in the food world and kind of in the Alice Waters,
Yep.
Gary Nabhan, that whole world. And I got to meet a lot of them. Michael Pollan, they came and spoke, and we were able to do chef series with them.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
just really neat, like New York City experiences. And then my dad got really sick, and I was in like my mid to late 20s. No, late 20s, and my dad got really sick, and my parents asked me to come back to home. So I pretty much left that and went home. And because my dad apparently, at the time was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and had like given a very short diagnosis. And so I just basically packed up and went back to Dallas. But that was when my introduction to Korean food began again, because my mom, because he was given like a 2 week prognosis, he lived for 2 more years. And I attribute it completely to what my mom fed him, because
Okay, now we have to unpack that. What did
yeah.
mom feed him? And can we take notes, Heather?
Honestly, it was just like amazing. There's so much depth to Korean food that I didn't know in terms of, I think the country has always been a country of survival because they've been occupied and they're a small country, poor. Before the 80s, they were a very poor country. So they just learned how to just eke out the nutrients of anything that you could was edible, like any plant, fiber, wood, root. You just made teas, you made broths. And so that like philosophy in general as the basis of the cuisine, it's evolved into now where, all dishes have really long-standing broths and all the minerals from seaweed. Um, they, all the calcium from all the bones from all the animals, that
Yeah.
they don't waste anything, right? So
Right.
everything is just nutrient dense. And so my mom made things for him. And when he wouldn't eat or couldn't eat or didn't have an appetite, she'd make porridges with long-standing broths filled with vitamins. And he just, and I got to be a part of that because I came home thinking I was coming for a few months. I ended up just moving to Dallas. And yeah, I got to cook with her and do that whole thing. And that was just, from then after that, I just looked at culinary more as like a healing modality for me. And so I went on to study that at Natural Epicurean here in Austin. I was
Which is
graduating
a
from a
huge
two-year
program, very successful here in Austin. Yes.
2 year kind of looking at
Mhm.
food as a healing art program. It was really great. It gave me a window into like how you can utilize food for healing. So that became really just my lifestyle. Translating that into the concept today has been more challenging, but we do things at the restaurant with lots of fermentation. We use a lot of ingredients that have no preservatives or things in them. A lot of Korean and Asian ingredients can have those kinds of
Mhm.
strange
Yes.
ingredients that you don't know what it is. And so I've
Uh-huh.
vetted a lot of that. We use a lot of we have this great resource and product directly from Korea. So we get some ingredients from Korea, which are really great. And then yeah, just trying to kind of find that balance,
Yeah.
of we do 24-hour broths for our soups, doing what we can in all of the dishes to make sure that they are nutrient, but then it's not as like perfect as if you could make everything from home, but yeah.
Well, yeah. And I feel like in full disclosure for everyone else, like one of the reasons I sought Lynn out was because I feel like this is like admitting that I watch ETV, which I don't, but I love the book Pachenko, and I actually think my father is online tonight watching. I made him read it. I've read it twice. It's a dense book. It is a beautiful book, but when
Yeah.
you go through, what happened in Korea and watching what happens when you have this kind of poverty in the occupation, and when these people are displaced into Japan, and what happens when you're forced to live on the edge of society, and what that means. But like even in Pachenko, the culinary themes that you talked about come out in a very prominent way. And
Yeah.
so when we met, that struck me right away when you were talking about the wellness properties and your father and how you've brought that forward into the restaurant. I think it's something that really resonated when we first met.
Yeah. It is the fundamental basis for that cuisine. Is a lot of it is how do you make it the most nutritious possible? Because we don't have a lot of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that is a really amazing foundation because there's so much depth to that process.
Yeah.
Everything has a lot of time and depth to it, like every fermentation, every tea, every broth. And so that concept is not so common anymore. And then I think if you take that as your basis and you modernize it, or you have your own kind of gourmet or creative, that is still part of the flavor profile, which I think is really interesting about Korean food.
But there's a difference between, the work that your mother and you did together and your family, and going on to the wellness certification and opening a restaurant. Of course, you didn't know the pandemic was coming, but how did you decide? And you were a mother already. How did you decide to take that plunge?
Yeah, it's I have wanted to open so this concept did form in my brain sometime in my early 20s. I was thinking, even when I was living in New York, wow, wouldn't it be great to have just some great Korean food with a great cocktail? Like that's kind of was the
Best of both
sweet.
worlds.
How do I have really good Korean food and a really great cocktail at the same time? And I think that seed just kind of was there for a long time because I couldn't obviously execute that idea at a young age. And then as I got older and I had children, it really did get shelved. It really almost got booted out of just, I think it did. I think I was like, there's no way I'm going to do this now. Like that dream is past. And I actually had come to accept it. I was like, well, it's just not going to happen. And I was being a mom, and as my girls grew up, they didn't need me as much on the, pragmatic day to day. I just was, I think we all feel this, right? Like what now? And this opportunity just kind of surfaced. I was working in kind of consulting with my husband, and one of our clients had this piece of property that Oseyo's in now, and was like, I've heard you have always wanted to open a restaurant. This is a restaurant. Do you want to, what do you want it? And that kind of property, where it's located, just for context, the East Side is a really big growing part of Austin, and
Yeah.
you don't know about properties when they come up for sale. They just go to they go to the person that knows the owner. And so I happened to be one of those that knew the owner, and I said no. And I was like, no, like no way would I ever do that right now. I can't, all the things, right? And I went home and was telling my kids, and my girls were like, what? Why not? And so that struck me, and I was like, well, so many reasons why.
You're like, let me
I
just
mean,
sit
where
you
do
down.
I begin? And so I sat with that, and then I officially did say no. And then about a year later, he
Wait,
came
so
back.
the property, what happened to the property when
It
you
had
said
just
no?
sat there. It had just sat there. It was kind of not as crazy as it has been the last
Yeah.
few years. This was
Because
back
this
in.
area is now becoming, just for context for folks, not only is, I mean, it's right on Chavez Street in Austin, which sits on the river. It is like one of the main thoroughfares, and now there's restaurants all over on your side as well. So it's becoming a go-to spot.
I know. And so this kind of surfaced 2015, I think. So it wasn't quite,
Yeah, little bit on the
it
early
was
side.
happening, but, and I definitely understood the value of the potential of it, but I said no. And so then I think it was about a year later, it had still just been sitting, and he approached me again. And that was when I just was, so I basically became partners with them,
Mhm.
and I didn't want to have a bunch of investors. I didn't want to be accountable to all these people.
Exactly.
And I just said, here's what we could do in terms of the contribution. Can you match that? We became 50-50, and we were really low budget. That restaurant was, honestly, I don't know, it's designed on a dime. Like,
Mhm. We
we
know a little bit about that. Yeah.
that's why it's so cozy, 'cause it's a lot of stuff from my house.
Hey, now, don't knock the artifacts. We'll get to those next.
Yeah. So I just then decided, if I don't do this, I don't know another opportunity that could be so presented just so perfectly. I created all these reasons. If this doesn't happen, then I won't do it. So I was like, okay, this is how much we can do. Can you match it? Yes. Okay. Well, then, this is only we can spend. Yes. Okay. I'm like, okay. So it just became very easy, and it just happened in a way because I felt like I needed to show my girls to, if you've got something you want to do and an opportunity is there, you should take it, right? So
Yes.
I took it, and then COVID hit.
And then you were like, girls, why did you talk me into this? There's a
Bad
pandemic.
idea. Why? Who do want to do this? Yeah. Good timing, bad timing. I don't know. It was, we had a great, I don't know if I can keep going, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you had another question or not,
No,
but
you're going right where I was going to ask. So go ahead. Yes.
yeah, I think just we opened, and we just hit it running, like just super busy. I remember the night before we opened, I was like, what if nobody comes tomorrow? And even though there were reservations and things, I just still was like, I can't picture people walking into this space and like eating, and so it just happened, and we were just go from day one. It was super well received and super busy, and I was so grateful. And it was really crazy. It's like any of those openings, me, my husband, my partners, my kids, we were all there. My daughter was so young, she had to stand on a stool to get the rice out of the thing. And and then 9 months later we were shut down. So that was like a real, like,
In Austin, for folks that are coming from all around to join us, Austin closed down in a very firm fashion as compared to the rest of Texas.
Yeah, it was like tomorrow, close everything. So I had actually been in Mexico for taking my kind of my first break since we had opened, and it was like spring break, right? Yeah, spring break. And
Yeah.
my manager called me, was like, you need to come home. And so we flew home and shut down the restaurant and operate and just, yeah, navigated all of those things. And I just feel like just now we're coming off of the process and the remnants of that. That was so much of just like preserving the team, retention, doing what we can. We pivoted business ideas like a million times.
Yep.
And then, yeah, we slowly reopened and we've been slowly getting back into it. But I feel like we're going to maybe do a relaunch in January where
Your honeymoon period kind of got cheated by the pandemic. So a relaunch makes a lot of sense for a restaurant.
Yeah. With new things. Like we didn't even have the courtyard we didn't have the outdoor area or that additional room. We just had the one. And so I think we're going to just maybe reset for 2023.
Well, so Lynn, let's shift a little bit and you can share some of your artifacts because what's we were talking before, the event started tonight, and I was laughing because I did go to Oseyo last night and I brought some folks with me. And we were sitting down for no more than 10 seconds when one of the other people said, I wonder where she gets her artwork. It's beautiful. And meanwhile, I'm over there taking a picture of a chair. And we needed to sit down and order. But we were really captivated by the space around us. So brava. But now let's hear a little bit about that, because it's legitimate artifacts that are just hiding in plain sight, and also some family ties for your family, for your husband as well. So let's go into a little show and tell, shall we?
Sure. Yeah. So let's see. I guess I can share my screen.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Essentially, can you see?
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Okay. What did I do?
And if necessary, I can share and click for you.
Okay, I'm going here. Host disabled participant screen sharing. I guess it's telling me that I'm not allowed to do that.
Oh yes, I can't share either. Here's the only powerful one.
Let me share. Let me share, Heather.
1 second
and Heather will share her screen and then we'll be good to go.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, you guys should be fully enabled to go. Otherwise, I can gladly share.
Oh, I can do it now. Thank you. I'll share, Lynn, and you can tell me where I'm off to. So this is Lynn's artifact. And I also really love that amateur ukulele player. I want to, are you going to have a show at the restaurant?
Should I bust out a song?
Which artifact would you like me to go to?
Well, I was going to start off by saying that a lot of the design for the restaurant was very homegrown. We kind of like used a lot of Korean materials or natural stone, wood, fabric. So I kind of wanted to bring in, as the design aesthetic, a lot of Korean color palette and also Korean artifacts, things from my childhood, but also just that are very Korean into the space, and featuring a lot of the arts of Korea, which are fabric arts, ceramic art, and basket weaving. So some of these reflect that, and then some of this just reflects what I like. But I can walk you through some of these. So if you go down a little bit, for example, way down, okay, right here, that first one is if you want to click open that clock. This is on the wall in the middle of the dining room, and it took a lot for me to convince my brother to let me have it, but it's my grandfather's, and it's made in Japan, and he grew up during the occupation, and then it was passed down to my dad, and then to my brother. So it's not mine.
Oh, it's
Uh,
on loan.
it's on loan to the restaurant. But it actually still works. You can wind it up and it rings this beautiful thing, the sound. And so that's from Japan, well over 100 years. So that's one special item. And then the screen next to it is a screen of my dad's, and he loved this thing. And I used to hate it actually because it was always in the way in my house. But when he passed away, I was like, oh, and it's a depiction of the Battle of Japan with their big turtle ship. And so this is very aging, but I still have it on the wall at the restaurant as well. There's a big wall that features this. This little wooden sculpture here, right in the middle, I found this in an antique store and it looks exactly like my grandmother. It kind of spooked me out. I mean, the face and the smile and the cheeks and everything. So I had to get it. And it's unknown, but very old little sculpture.
Sweet.
It's hidden up on a shelf in the restaurant. That's my mom's jewelry box over there to the left.
Oh, the story on this one is pretty funny.
Yeah, my grandmother basically used to hide candy in it. And when we come visit her, she'd open the jewelry box and get us candy out of it. And now I can't open it.
Oh no.
It has a little, like, that fish is a lock,
Yeah.
and I can't get it open.
Oh, we need a
So
locksmith.
it's just in there. Well, I don't know what's in the box.
Oh, is there something in it? When you shake it?
Well, what's interesting is inside those boxes are little boxes, like
Oh,
compartment little boxes, and so it does make a sound, but I don't know what's in it.
oh, this is a
And I
great.
don't want to bust it open because it's a pretty delicate thing. So
No,
I will fish my way in there. I haven't tried that hard, but um, that's that. And then I can get a little bit of the artwork. This painting. So my husband is an artist and he paints really large scale paintings. And one of them I didn't take a picture of, but this one he painted for me on Valentine's Day. We had met and then we had Valentine's Day and he got up from, we were poor and we were just eating in the, living room. And then he got up and painted this painting. He did it in like 2 hours. And,
wow.
yeah.
And then he was a keeper.
And then I was like, okay, I like the painting. Can I have
Has
it?
it always been on canvas or did you have it stored, rolled up?
Oh, a lot of this has been rolled up for a while because they're big.
You need the right space for it.
Mm-hmm. So this is hanging in the back Oseyo room where we host events.
This one was really sweet.
Oh, yeah. This is my daughter. She made this so I have an older daughter who also does a lot of art, and she had a painting hung up in the restaurant for a little bit. And so my younger daughter at the time said she wanted something, so she made this. And it's a little handmade loom, and she kind of wove yarn through it. So it's up on the shelf too.
And I love that it's above the chef's table. It's there in the restaurant. I think that's great. This one too, this was actually, I'm like, is it bad that I mentioned it was mentioned in Pachinko as well, this
Yeah.
artistry being unique and identified with Korea.
Yeah, very much so. These are a collection of my grandparents as well that I have. I have 3 of them, and they're this beautiful, very unique to Korea glaze, the celadon glaze with depictions of all. These are very iconographic. Is that what the word? Korea, and so yeah, we have some of those on the shelving, and my dad gave them to me. And there's that chair. So I do find a lot of fun things in estate sales and things. And then I bring them and clean them up and bring them into the restaurant. And so these are really famous Wassily chairs by a German furniture designer. And I got them literally almost like for free.
Yeah, those are gorgeous. And I had to take a picture as soon as I saw one. And I like that you included the details.
I had fun with the artifacts because I would like find my own information and then just put it in here, or I'd find a
Yep.
link to something and then I'd put it in. And so that was a fun way to log some of this stuff.
Yeah, it's really nice. I love it when people do that, because then, and I do it too, like when I was looking up H. Stern and I was looking up the history of this jeweler, and it's really fun to just keep all that information together.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And this too, I saw it at the restaurant, but I didn't know the story behind it, and I was glad to hear it. Can you share a little bit about what these are?
Yes, these are 3 fabrics that are hanging in 3 small windows like this in the main dining room, and they are they're inspired by what's called a pojagi. A pojagi is fabric that Koreans use to wrap things. It's almost like they use that more than bags, or they used to. Like a picnic would just be put in the middle of fabric and then wrapped. And you see that if you ever watch Pachinko on Apple TV.
Oh,
It's really good.
yeah.
Anyway, the
Yeah.
visuals they have, you see that a lot, and that's nice
Yeah.
to remember. But it's become an art form as well, where it becomes like a fabric art form. And this style is patchwork style on that similar fabric. And so this was an artist in Korea, and I bought 3 panels for our window.
I love it. And I did ask, so Lynn, you said that you actually do try and share these stories with your girls. So in theory, they knew about them. I say in theory because my trifecta of questions of did you tell the story? Did you tell it more than once? And were they actually listening?
No, to probably the second too. So
But you also made the point of, a lot of friends, and now at the restaurant, they don't know, and they're kind of hidden
yeah.
in plain sight, and people come in and it's conversation pieces, especially because you have a lot of mixing and mingling, or with your husband's art, immediately the person next to me asked about the art, right? Like,
Yeah.
where does this come from? Especially because the scale, I think there are a lot of big Texas homes, let's face it. And they're like, where do I get art on this scale?
Right. No, it's true. It is actually a thing that has come up here in Texas.
Mhm.
But yeah, you know how you decorate Oseyo is like my home. And I think, when you decorate your home, you have things that have meaning to you around your home. And I didn't think of them as things that people would find interesting. So I kind of just, I could tell that it obviously creates a vibe, it creates a setting, but I had never thought that people would actually be curious about what it is. And so it's nice to talk about it. And I do realize that lots of people ask, and servers even ask, like, I want to, people ask about this, or they want to know too. They want to know and talk about it because they know me now personally. So it is something I'm realizing over time that people do want to hear about kind of some of these stories. So that's why I never really shared them. It's kind of in the space. There's a lot of them. They're all over.
No, I love it. Yeah, so when you walk into that restaurant, you have all these back shelves. They're full of artifacts, really. But the big main walls do have a lot that you featured here, which I think is great as well. So I'm going to quickly stop sharing. Heather,
And
oh,
as
go
I'm jumping
ahead,
in
Heather.
say, yep. Lynn, we've got a couple of comments and questions from the audience.
Okay.
One is a comment from Sue. She suggests that you might want to check with an Asian museum for clues as to how you might be able to unlock the box.
Oh, yeah, that's a
They
really
might have some
good
good
idea.
suggestions.
I love it.
Yeah. And then we've got a question. What is one of your favorite recipes you cooked with your mom?
Mm. I think, well, that's a good question. I loved making kimchi with my mom, which probably sounds very stereotypical, but it is the best thing to do with your mom. I mean, and I think it's because Koreans are really, they have this expression called sonmat, which basically literally translates to hand taste. Like your hands really need to be in the food, and it really needs to get in there, and you'll taste that as kind of what the philosophy, even that sounds really weird in English, that's kind of what it is.
It's
And
like
so
tasting the love put into
tasting,
making
just
the
like
food.
like they really are obviously feeling the ingredient, they know what's happening with, especially with kimchi. And so when you there's so many like little steps and working together. And I just remember just visualizing my mom's hands. And that was just a really, whenever I make kimchi, that's the memory that's floating in my brain, is all the times I made kimchi with her. Because it's always a little bit different every time too. It's like a little more of this or a little more of that, and the layering of all the salt in between the leaves and just the methodical nature of it all, and like putting it and soaking it and then waiting and going and watching TV and then coming back. I think that whole process is really nice. But my mom's also really good with soups. So there's another kalbitang, which is short rib soup, another dish that's very much like about like getting in with the meat and like texturizing it and salting it and boiling it. And it's like a very long process. So those two really stick out in my mind, kalbitang and making kimchi.
That sounds delicious.
And I was thinking, Lynn, with the hand and taste, when I traveled to India, I had underestimated how important eating with their hands was. And one of the people, there's a picture of us sitting together at the table, and they eat with their hands, and he's like, I can't taste it right if it's not in my hands. Like,
oh wow,
it's
too removed.
Yeah, he said it just isn't. He really can't taste it properly if it's not coming from his hands. And I was looking at my hands. I'm like, really? Like,
You don't even
it was
hands?
it was a cultural moment. I mean, it's really messy stuff. I was like, okay. Probably in the times of COVID, there's some problems here. But anyway, sorry, Heather, continue.
Well, I think we don't in a lot of actually a lot of other cuisines. I mean, I think a lot of cuisines obviously use their hands, but there's also a lot of cuisines that don't. And Koreans are all about just getting in there and like feeling it all out, and so it's it's how Mexicans cook too. So that's why we work really well together, our chef and I.
Yeah, that's great. I remember you saying earlier on you get this very neat synergy between the two, like Mexican, Korean cuisines, which personally I never would have imagined that, but that's great to know. We have a question from the audience. Have you or will you be artifacting any of the recipes and the stories that go with them?
I love that idea. That's a great idea. That's actually really wonderful. Thank you. I hadn't thought about it. I feel like artifacts for me is unfolding every day. Like, oh, I could use it like this. So, but there are, one of the best things about this process of opening a restaurant was documenting a lot of my mom's recipes. And because they weren't documented, they were just verbally passed down, which I think works when you're like live with your mom and you and you pass it. But like in our modern day, that just doesn't get that won't get translated to my kids unless I document it. So that's a great idea.
And that actually plays into the next question we have for the audience: is have your daughters picked up on your love of cooking?
I think it's for my older daughter, it might have gone dormant. She's in everything else is, she's in the 16-year-old. What she was really interested has gone dormant. She used to love cooking. I still think she likes it. She does every now and then, but my younger daughter is really into baking. She loves to bake, and I'm a horrible baker. So, but they have a really
baking's brutal. You stick it in the oven and you cross your fingers. I mean, come on.
I'm like, oh, a little bit more doesn't hurt, right? And she's much more, read the recipe. But she loves to bake, and both of them have a really nice palate. They both like to eat all kinds of food, which is great.
Awesome. Well, it looks like the jewelry box, the fish lock, has gotten a lot of attention from the audience. We have another comment I'm going to share with you.
Okay.
One of our viewers said to unlock the box, if you're lucky, insert a straight object in the hole on the right side underneath the tail.
Oh my God.
Straight through, and the pin may slide out. They do have keys, but an eyeglass screwdriver might work. Search online too for how to unlock a Korean fish lock.
Oh my God.
This is great. This is going to be part 2 of this artifact. Is going to be in
video, what was and inside. I'll send it to you guys. Me attempting to unlock. Oh my God, I love it.
I think we'll have to get a viewers update if you unlock it.
If there's something really fascinating in there, I will let you all know.
Well, we have to know if it's empty too. I mean, curious minds
There could be
need an
this
answer.
beautiful piece of jewelry in there that I don't know about.
A secret recipe. I mean, that would be par for the course today. But I actually think it'd be really neat to see some, like, with artifacts, you can include video snippets. It'd
Oh,
be neat to
yeah.
see, like, you can even do fast forwarded or little steps along the way. But I think it'd be really neat to see some of those kinds of things as well. But you even talked about at the restaurant, people come in, they're like, where do they'll ask about, where do you buy X, Y, Z? It's like, here's vendors we work with, and there's so much about what makes up a restaurant.
That's
And
true. I do that. I always am wondering, like, if I like a plate or like where'd this come from? Very much like that. Yeah. That's a good idea. So much, so many things to do. So many
Heather, do you have another
artifacts.
question? Otherwise, I have two more still.
I do. I've got one more. Oh, I've got two more now. What happens if you shake the box? You might have already alluded to this, but they're very curious about this box.
I think I've made the box very alluring. So I clearly haven't given it as much. I guess I don't know why I haven't been more curious about getting into that box. I think there's a part of me that was like, what if there's nothing in the box?
Oh.
That I like to create the stories in my mind. It just rattles a little bit, like because I know that there's inserts in there, but it's not overly heavy, so I don't think there's, yeah. But I don't have the box
Jewelry's not
with me. It's
heavy.
at the restaurant. Otherwise, I would have brought it out and shown you guys.
We'll try and record a part 2. I'll come to you and get more photos.
Okay.
Another one of our viewers has a suggestion about the box.
Oh my
They say
gosh.
maybe use it as a time capsule and add stuff to it and leave it for your daughters, the private artifact, but don't tell them how to unlock it. Let it be their mystery.
Oh,
I like this.
I love that.
This box is getting a whole new life.
I
Yeah.
like that idea. A lot of good ideas. Okay, I'm gonna open it and then maybe there's something for me and then I will put something meaningful and give it to them.
You're not obliged to give it to anybody. Whatever is finders keepers is.
Yeah, that's mine. The
Yeah.
box is given to me.
Yeah. So, Heather, were there others?
That's it for right now.
I had kind of a penultimate question. We talked about how you got to Oseyo. We talked about pandemic. What about now? So you're playing with new menus. If people come to Austin, they'll have a chance to come in. But what I'm wondering about it is you're moving into new phases on the menu side and bringing people into the restaurant. But what about you and where you've come from the managing side? That's a very different aspect. And I'm wondering how that plays out for you in terms of hiring and managing and what you're trying to do on that side.
Yeah. Yeah, the restaurant's evolved into a lot of things for me. I think when I first started, I had a very simple idea of having traditional Korean dishes in a fun setting. That was kind of just the whole premise. But what's been born out of it is a lot of sides of me that I find that I have passion in, which is, mental health and diversity. And there's all these pillars of like things that we can do with Oseyo as a platform. I'm realizing one of them is through the pandemic, how much the industry doesn't have the resources to have any mental health services. They're a really interesting pocket of the population of the workforce where, they're all trying to do different things, but they're working at a restaurant and we collectively work there, and it can be very toxic in a lot of situations and hardworking, and customers can sometimes be really mean, and it's just a really hard to put on that face every night and do the show every day. It can be mentally tiring. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen that show, the new one that everyone loves, Chef. Is it called Chef? Anyway, it's just a grueling environment, and so I've been looking and finding resources to provide more mental health services for my staff and like contributing to that effort. And then also just helping, even immigration services is like a big part of my reality of some of the employees and how do we get them asylum and how do we get them to work. And those issues are really prominent in an owner's life. And so it's been really like a very big focus as well. But to your question of moving forward, like I feel like as a platform, there's avenues for that focus, but also I opened up as a traditional Korean restaurant, but I really got a lot of backlash and I think I offended quite a bit of people because at least that's what it felt like. I was very much accused of, not having authentic dishes, and this is an authentic Korean. And it's weird. I would get both. I would have a family from Korea come in and say, "This is so delicious," and then the next night be like, "This is terrible. This is not authentic." So this is this crazy ride that I rode, and I realized, wow. I guess I'm not trying to represent like a whole Korean cuisine. These are just my mom and I's favorite dishes. And I realized having it be just Korean food was not maybe misleading. And so I now have this, but what it's opened up to me is like, wow, there is a lot of my take on food could be
Sure.
expressed more in this food as a Korean American. So there's Mexican flavors, there's Texas flavors, there's things that I love. I was thinking the other day, like baking a Korean bread. So I feel like I shouldn't necessarily confine myself to that, so I'm now branching into how can the menu reflect all kinds of Korean American flavors as we introduce these new menus. So those are kind of the focuses for what's coming up. It's just Oseyo as a platform in areas that we all feel really good about as a team. And then, yeah, trying out some new menus, some new flavors.
Well, this is exciting. I'm local, so I'm very excited about this in a very like I get to go enjoy it sort of fashion. But for everybody else, I think that what inspired us to want to bring you on as well was just chefs are all around us, restaurants are all around us, recipes are all around us. And as we move closer to the holidays, your story about why you came back, why you came up in this world, why it's your home recipes, we really want to encourage people to capture those recipes in any way they want to. Of course, artifacting is one way to do it, but we really want people to bring those forward because I think that even I did one recently that's, a couple generations old, and I keep having all my cousins keep asking me for this recipe. And now I'm like, great, it's on Artifacts. You have access to it. Like, not that they can't call me, but I think it's really neat to talk about like how people make their own modifications to it. Like you're saying, like how you make it yours. And
Yeah.
so I think we can also share the wisdom of that, but also carry forward some of our own history and cultural or just, local as well. So I think that's really neat. And you have the extra advantage of with your chef, he's bringing in other inspiration from his heritage, and I think it'll just be unique. It'll be maybe not perfectly traditional. I don't know what that would be even Korean,
Yeah.
but is there one way to make a burger in the US? Probably not. So I think you can
That'd be
tell
really
those,
boring.
I know, right? You can tell all those naysayers to go away. But
Yeah,
anyway,
but I think it's kind of part of the process, right? Of anything
yeah,
you go to express yourself doing, it actually makes you further refine what you're doing, and that's how I look at it. It's made me
yeah.
realize there's more to this than what I originally set out to do.
And I
So
got one question by text from the audience, so I'll just ask. Someone asked me, so you mentioned that you get, and we're at the top of the hour, I realize, but you mentioned you order some ingredients from Korea.
yes.
Whether because of the pandemic or otherwise, how has it gone sourcing other ingredients that are critical for your daily menu, never mind specials, but how has that gone for you with supply chain issues and have inflationary pressures or supply chain created shifts that you weren't expecting but had to roll with?
Yeah, I think that one of the things I'm learning is the model that like restaurateurs have followed for many, many years is really upside down. Like we have to shift in the way we do business. And, I studied restaurant P&L and business, 20 years ago, and it's pretty much COGS plus labor is this, and that just doesn't work right now because COGS and labor are both off the charts. And so, yeah, that's why, unfortunately, you have to see rate. Like, I initially intended to open up this restaurant with moderate pricing so that it could be a real diverse and more high volume place. But honestly, it's really hard with the real estate and the labor, and then the actual products being unavailable or really expensive. So it's been a lot of things just not being on the menu, even though we say it's going to be on the menu, people being disappointed that we don't have certain dishes or why this is so expensive now. And it's hard to find that, like, what are people really going to pay for this, even though it needs to be this price because of I can't get this normal product in, or so yeah, it's really messed with everything. It's messed with the whole model. So, and what I mean by that is I now look at other ways of, one, increasing revenue without a lot of additional cost, and then two, how do you reduce all other types of costs, which then affect the experience too. Like, maybe it's a different glass, or it's a different chopstick, or all those things become less of a, it just, decision making is really different and how you approach. And I think that's why you see restaurants doing a lot of other things now, like
everywhere.
takeout or merchandising or sauces or
merch. I would love to find some Oseyo swag. What do you have coming?
Oh yeah, we'll have some merch. We'll have some merch in the new year.
Well, Lynn, we're at the top of the hour. It has been such a pleasure for you bringing us into your culinary world. I've never had this long of a chat with someone in the culinary world. It's really a special treat, and we look forward to seeing maybe some recipes that are safe to share.
Great idea.
But the generous, what you've already shared is wonderful, and we're just very grateful that you took time out of your busy schedule.
A big thank you, Lynn.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a really fun process.
And we've got one a quick closing comment from the audience. Sue says it's been wonderful, and that you should be able to call your food Korean fusion, and then you get poetic license to expand horizons. So,
I love it.
I love that. Very thoughtful group. I appreciate all the little insights.
Yeah, we appreciate you sharing your story with us and your family history, and of course, all the artifacts you have at Oseyo. And we're very excited to see what the new year brings for you and your team as you relaunch.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So folks, that's a wrap for our fall series of Evenings with Artifacts, and everyone will be getting a little questionnaire and a teaser for the spring. We've had so many requests and so many ideas submitted to us for new topics. I think we could go every week for 365 days a year, and we're a little terrified, but grateful. We're not going to do that, but we will be looking at doing a spring series as well, just because the response has been so good. So we'll see what happens next, but thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you and good night.